Morning kids, Ross from Dell's Garden Center here, and it's Father's Day weekend and it's a good time to plant a tree, so I thought I'd put together a video to show you how we should plant a tree. And the information I'm using here is from University of Minnesota, from their horticulture department. They've got some good videos online that you can look at, and also from seminars I've been to from Dr. Ball from South Dakota State University. Hook 'em rabbits. All right. So here we go. So what we want to do is we want to dig the hole, obviously, and we prepared partly. They don't have the hole completely dug yet, but you want to get your hole dug first. Of course, you want to make that a generous hole. I always dig, a hole that's about twice the width of the pot, and then not too deep. A lot of times you might dig it too deep. You say, what's the problem with that? If you dig it too deep and you put soil back in the bottom, if you ever put mud on top of or dirt on top of the ground and gotten it all wet, it just smooshes. Okay, so if you get that smushy dirt on the bottom of that soil, the bottom of that root ball, the root ball might sink back down to the area where you dug the bottom of that hole. So before we get completely dug with our hole, we want to start checking the depth that we need to be planting this tree at. So let's look at the tree that we've got here. This is a new kind of tree that we have. It's called a Korean maple, and it's from the northern Jack Frost collection from Isley Nursery. It's called North Wind Maple. See, it's got these really cool palmate leaves, kind of like a Japanese maple would have. So, so it's a lot hardier though. It lives here in northwest Iowa. And so what we want to do is figure out the depth that we want to plant this tree. And I just got to knock that pot off of there, and you'll see that there's a nice tight root ball that we have down below there. Okay, now this is 100% of the tree's roots. Okay, there's no roots left in the ground at harvesting like you would have with a bald burlap tree. So when you harvest a bald burlap tree, you're getting maybe 20% of the roots, and so a tree's able to make it on 20% of the roots. So we've got 100% of the roots here, and but we're going to mess it up a little bit here to make sure that these roots grow into the soil. So we've got a couple sticks in here we want to take out, but I picked this tree specifically because it has this right here, and you can see what that is. It's a root that has come out, and rather than going out into the ground, it's come out and immediately started circling around the trunk. So I spotted this one in our nursery lot and thought, well, okay, we got to do something with that. Because that root will continue to grow and continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger, as will the trunk will continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And what happens is that does not work, and what happens is that root will win and it'll strangle out the tree. So when the tree gets to be a pretty good size, all of a sudden it starts to decline, doesn't look as good, and it's because its root is choking it. So we also have another issue with this. So anyway, let's just get that pruned off of there. So I'm going to very carefully come along here with the nice sharp pruners, and you always should have a nice set of pruners at your house. We sell them at Dell's Garden Center. So we're just going to prune that guy off of there, just like that. Careful not to cut the trunk, but just get enough of that thing that I can pry that guy off of there. There we go. Got it. Okay. So now the other thing that's very important is that we don't plant the trees too deep. We get a lot of stem girdling roots because trees are planted too deep. And I'm going to cut that guy off of there. There we go. And so, so we want to dig down on this root ball and find where that first root is. And sometimes the dirt level might be up to here. Now nurseries are getting a lot better at doing this so that the roots are to the surface. You can see there's my first root. So that's where we'll want to plant this plant. So we're going to plant about right this level. So had it not been the case that we could tell where that first root is, what we would have done is just laid this thing on the ground. And we would have cut in a saw like this, and we would just have cut some of those roots back like this. been able to tear some of these roots aside. And we'd have kept doing that down the root ball until we found that first root coming out. So remember how we talked about how this tree has 100% of its roots in this root mass? So taking this little bit of roots out of here, not going to be a big issue. Cut it back about in here. So get yourself a good saw. I robbed this one off of a pole pruners we had here. And I'm going to take some of these roots. So you can see how high the roots are right here compared to that trunk right there. I'm going to take a little bit of this root out of here too to make sure we don't have some of these roots circling around. If those roots are circling around below the stem of the tree and they're going to choke other roots off, not as big of a deal. Now I want to make sure that I stop before I get to the trunk of that tree. I don't want to cut up some of the big roots right next to the trunk. But we're going to get this. All right. Taking back there. See if we can find some of the roots coming out from the trunk. On this side, we know where they're coming out on the other side, and I can see we're coming down and we're getting a nice flare to the tree trunk there, so we're getting really close to, and I can see a root coming out here that looks like it's coming right off of that stem right there. Another one coming there. So we're at the right depth. We want to plant this thing somewhere between this area right in here. Okay, and there's our little root on the front side. That was coming up through there. So we're going to get that right at that root flare. We should be fine. Okay, so that's all the deeper we're going to plant that tree. Okay, it's not all that deep, so that's why you want to watch it when you're digging your hole. In fact, when I was digging my hole, I had to stop because, like, gosh, I'm getting a little too deep here maybe. So we're just going to finish getting this down to about the right depth. Now the other issue we have here is that this is in a planting bed, and this planting bed had about 4 inches of mulch in that bed. And so I don't want to plant that tree right down at the bottom of this level because my soil level basically is up here, okay? And I don't want to have that tree down there with the potential of 4 inches of mulch, you know, going over top of that trunk. We want that mulch to not cover that trunk of that tree. We want that mulch to come down right at the base of the tree. So if you see little mulch volcanoes, sometimes you see this, that practice isn't very good. You'll have some problems with trees, especially trees with very thin bark like this maple has. You'll get vectors that'll get into that trunk and cause some problems and diseases, and you might lose the whole tree very quickly. So we're about to the right depth here. I'm gonna clean a little bit out of the bottom here. I'm gonna check the depth. Okay, so what I decided I want to do is kind of split the difference between the 4 inches down root level or soil level here and the level of the existing lawn, which is right here, which is about 2 inches above. I don't want to go all the way down here, but if I go up to this height, then I'm going to have to move the soil up to it. It's going to make it a lot harder to water. And so I'm thinking that splitting the difference here is about what we should do. So got that in there. Looks like we're about a little bit below the level of the edging, and we're a little bit above the level of the soil. So we're pretty good. So now we can get ready to start backfilling it. And what we want to do once again here is we want to lay this thing down, and we want to take our saw. And remember, we got 100% of our root mass here, so in order to keep any circling roots from happening, we're going to go along the sides here and cut about 1 inch off. And we'll cut that off of about 3, maybe 4 sides. So we're going to cut that off. And you can go on the University of Minnesota website and find their video. And then also Dr. John Ball from South Dakota State University. Yeah, he says go ahead and have at it. So So we're going to do that. This plant's not quite in the center, so I'm going to make it a little bit farther away there from that trunk so we don't damage anything. I'm going to inspect on the bottom. A lot of times you'll see big roots on the bottom of this root ball that will be circling around, and if that's the case, you take your saw and kind of come in there like this a little bit. So I'm going to do that anyhow. So now we're ready to go. That's what you should have for your root ball. Okay, so we can start backfilling. The hole's big enough that I can add soil around that root ball and pack it well with my hands and my feet. I want to have enough room to get my fist in there to pack the soil really well. So we'll put a little bit of soil around the tree, like we see here. And we'll kind of look at the tree, make sure it's straight up and down. Like it might need to go this way just a bit. I'll pack that side first. Look at it from the other side. Looks like it might need to go a little bit towards me here. So pack that side in next. And we'll just go all the way around. Sure helps to have a nice pair of gloves. So get a pair of those. It feels like you can do almost anything when you've got a nice pair of gloves. Get some of my tools out of the way here. Add some more soil around there. I'm getting there. Compact your soil about every 2 to 3 inches. You'll get better compaction. And doing this by hand, you can have pretty much impossible to get it too much compaction. Now, if I wasn't doing a video, I would probably stop at this point, give it a little shot of water. But make sure I get around that root ball. You can do it afterwards also. So packing that soil tightly around the root ball so we don't have air pockets, so the plant doesn't dry out unnecessarily. Now's a good time to check and make sure it's straight too. Looking good. Got a little bark mixed in with the soil down here. That's just great. Got some bark in the bottom of the wheelbarrow. Left it in there because that will just add organic matter. This is a real heavy clay soil that we're digging into here. So now, since we're doing this, we need to talk about one other thing, and that's staking trees. University done by Dr. Carl Whitcomb from Oklahoma State University tells us we shouldn't stake trees. And the reason is because that tree will not grow good brace roots, and will have a smaller diameter trunk if we're not letting it get that exercise it needs by having the wind move it around a little bit. Now, because we're taking so much root ball away, we might have a tree that will tip over. And if that's the case, then you have to stake it. So I'm going to add a little soil here on the top to make a ring to help hold moisture. It's not going to be a super huge ring by any means, but it'll be enough to hold a little bit of water. And let's talk about watering while we're at it. These root balls have all their roots right there, but they're planted in a super light soil. Not much clay content at all. A lot of bark, a lot of peat. So that soil mix is much lighter than the surrounding soil, and what can happen is that heavy clay soil like we have here in most of Iowa and Minnesota, that heavy clay soil, get that weed out of there, will just suck the moisture right out of that root ball. So we used to say, you know, really heavy watering, really deep, long time. We're switching that up now to pretty much say we want to water that thing on, you know, more frequently, and we want to water it right on this root ball. And we get about a gallon or two, so for every inch of diameter, you want to put about a gallon, gallon and a half, somewhere in that range of water, and you'll be good. But you want to do that about, especially when you start out, about every day for the first week, maybe the first 2 weeks. Then you start backing off and backing off a little bit, and then you can just check it. Stick your finger in there, see how the moisture level is. So that's how you plant a tree nowadays. So for container grown trees, that's what you want to do. We might do another video for trees that are balled and burlapped, and so you can see how we plant those too, but pretty much the same concepts. So anyhow, that's all we got for today. It was a long video. Hopefully you're able to stay and watch it all. If not, you can reference it later. But anyway, this is Ross from Del's Garden Center, and until next time, keep on believing, won't you? Thanks.